Hello and welcome to day 6 of Practical English for Finance and Banking. Today we're going to be looking at unit number 29 from the book, which is Financial Idioms and Expressions. So before we can talk about financial idioms and expressions, first we need to understand what an idiom is. Okay, now this is the page from the textbook. Make sure you have this available so that you can follow along with today's class. So an idiom, according to the definition here, this is from Cambridge Dictionary, an idiom is a group of words in a fixed order that have a particular meaning that is different from the meanings of each word on its own. So a group of words, a phrase, an expression, in a fixed order, in a specific certain order. We don't change the order around, okay? That have a particular meaning, a special meaning, a specific meaning that's different from the meanings of each word on its own or each individual word. So that means if you look at an idiom, if you try to translate it word by word, it doesn't often make sense. And it certainly doesn't mean the same as the idiom does. The idiom, the words have to be in a particular order, said a certain way, and that has a specific meaning when they are used that way. For example, at the bottom here, they say to have bitten off more than you can chew is an idiom that means you have tried to do something which is too difficult for you. So if you think about this literally is like if it's an actual real thing, if you have a sandwich and you take a big bite, a huge bite of a sandwich, completely filling your mouth, you're going to have difficulty chewing that because your mouth is completely full. Your teeth, your jaws can't even move. So it would be difficult to handle that, to actually eat it and to swallow it. Okay? Well, that would be the literal meaning. But the idiom, you've bitten off more than you can chew, or often we say, I've bitten off more than I could chew, or past tense, I bit off more than I could chew. That just means you've not an actual sandwich or a piece of chicken, but you have attempted to do something that is too difficult, is too hard, that you cannot manage. You've got too much in your mouth, or in your life, or on your job, or too much responsibility, or too many projects or tasks to do, or something that requires more knowledge or skill or experience or expertise than you're capable of doing. You've bitten off more than you can chew. You've taken on a job or a project that you can't handle. Okay? So that's what that would mean. So that's a pretty common idiom there, to say that I've bitten off more than I can chew. You can use it about yourself. I bit off more than I could chew, or someone else. He's bitten off more than he can chew. He can't handle it. He's got too much going on. Another way to say that would be to say that he's in over his head. That would be another idiom there. If you think about water, if somebody's in water over their head, they can't breathe. They might drown. It's more than they can handle. He's in over his head. The responsibility, the skill, the expertise is, again, more than they're able or qualified to deal with. They're in over their head. They don't know what they're doing. They are incapable of handling this. It's chaos. It's confusion. They're going to fail. He's in over his head. Okay? So let's move on. Now this is a screenshot from CNN Money, obviously, and this is actually from a couple of years ago, but it's pretty fitting, pretty appropriate to what's going on now. says America has had the wind knocked out of its sails this year. America has had the wind knocked out of its sails this year. And then the main title down here says America's capsizing economy. Can it right the ship? So if you have a ship, a boat, if that ship turns over, goes sideways or completely upside down, we say that the ship has capsized. The way I think of that is if you have like a bottle or something, this is the cap. If it capsizes, the cap goes upside down. Okay? So a ship that capsizes is sinking. So that's the expression they're talking about here. America's capsizing economy. The economy is sinking. It's going under. Okay? Can America, can it right the ship? So if a ship is capsizing, there is a possibility that they might be able to bring it back into the correct position, an upright position, possibly. Okay, we call that righting the ship, righting the ship, R-I-G-H-T. If you right the ship, you bring it back into a stable, upright position. Okay, so America's sinking economy, can it recover? All right. So that's the question there. Now, let's go back to the top part here. America has had the wind knocked out of its sails this year. Sails? Does a ship have sails? S-A-L-E-S? No, it doesn't. A ship has sails. S-A-I-L-S. Okay? So, when they wrote this little introduction here, they used the wrong word, actually, because the words sails and sales are pronounced exactly the same. Okay, that's what we call homonyms. Words that have the same pronunciation, same homonyms, same pronunciation, sales and sales. So here, I assume whoever wrote this headline was thinking about economy and, economy, money, sales. Or, maybe even more likely, they used some sort of autocorrect or especially a voice-to-text app or program like on a cell phone, and the phone doesn't know whether you mean sales, S-A-L-E-S, or whether you're talking about a ship and you mean sales, S-A-I-L-S, because they sound exactly the same. Okay? So, this actually makes more sense. If you've had the wind knocked out of your sails, what does that mean? Well, if you're on a ship, a sailboat, it doesn't have an engine, a motor to move it. So it depends on the wind to fill the sails to push it across the water. If the wind has been knocked out of its sails, the sails are empty. There's no wind, there's no air, so the ship won't move. So if the wind has been knocked out of your sails, you've lost momentum, you've lost progress, you've come to a stop. Okay, so that's what it's talking about, and that's a common expression. If somebody, a company, a government, a person, if you've had the wind knocked out of your sails, something has happened to you, and you've been set back, you've been pushed back, you've been stopped in your tracks, and you're not making progress anymore because there's no wind to push you forward, to move you forward. So it's talking here, when that happens, then this ship is capsizing, sinking. Okay, I apologize. There was an interruption in the office, so I had to stop recording for a few minutes, so I'm back now. I don't remember exactly where I was when I stopped. I know we were talking, obviously, about the capsizing economy. Can it right the ship? And this is actually, even though this headline, this story is a couple of years old, it's actually really fitting. Fitting, like fitting would be like appropriate for what's happening right now with the coronavirus outbreak and all of the um, lockdowns and stay-at-home orders. Many businesses are closed. Restaurants are doing only takeout or delivery. Lots of small companies are really suffering. Obviously, tourism, airlines, hotels, entertainment, any kind of tourism, movie theaters are all closed right now. So the economy is suffering severely right now. Unemployment is going up rapidly. So this is actually very fitting to the current situation with the capsizing economy. Will the U.S. be able to recover that? And obviously that will depend on how long this crisis goes on, and how effective the economic stimulus plans are. And obviously this is not just an American problem, but Europe, China, Korea, Japan, Southeast Asia, Middle East, this is going to affect the world economy, already is affecting the world economy. So it will be, I'll say, interesting to see what happens and how well the world's governments handle this. And actually right now it's not just America's capsizing economy, but really it's the world's capsizing economy right now. Okay, so let's get into the actual exercises here with the financial idioms and expressions. So obviously the answers to these are in the back of the book, so you can check your answers there. There is one here where I don't understand the book's answer, so my answer will be different than what the book says. Okay. Okay, number one, or the instructions here for each sentence, decide whether the people being described are rich or poor. Okay? So the first one here, will have to tighten their belts. This is kind of worded a little strangely to me, that we will have to tighten their belts. That's not how I would normally use it or hear it. This is kind of a more common way to say it. Is here we have, I think the fat guy here represents the government, the regulators, holding his economic report and telling the other people, says how the economic game is played. And he's telling them, you lot will have to tighten your belts. You lot is you people. Okay? You lot will have to tighten your belts. Now, if you look at this, obviously he is very round and fat. And they, you can see here already, their belts are already pulled extremely tight. They probably can't get much tighter. So he's telling them, the fat guy with all the money, with all the economic power, is telling them, hey, you guys need to watch how you spend money. You need to tighten your belts. Another example here, and these are all from previous times, but they actually fit very closely to what's happening right now with the world economy. says, now it is high time to tighten your belts. High time means this is the right time, the appropriate time, the necessary time to do something. To tighten your belt means to reduce expenses, to cut waste, to try to conserve as much money as you can, to save money. So it's high time to tighten your belts, and this is the other headline here says world economy worst in 2 years, Europe darkening, and this is based on some survey. And like I said, this is from the past, but it's actually very appropriate for what's going on right now. Here's another one. It's time for automakers to tighten their belts and look for areas of inefficiencies and redundancies. They need to review what discretionary items can be eliminated. So here they're talking about automakers, car companies, tightening their belts. Again, cutting their expenses, cutting their waste. They need to look for areas of inefficiencies where there's waste, or redundancy where they're basically doing the same job twice, or they have two people doing the same job. So there's a lot of waste and inefficiency there. They need to review what discretionary items can be eliminated. Some things are necessary and vital and crucial. Some things are discretionary. They're optional. There's some choice about whether you actually have to have them or not. And another one here. Across the country, people are willing to tighten their belts and sacrifice. The people, the citizens, are making sacrifices and doing things. And this says the president should ask the oil industry to do the same. And again, this is very fitting for what's going on now with economies, with the economic crisis being caused by the coronavirus crisis. A lot of people are going to have to really cut back on their spending, and obviously entertainment, travel, vacations, things like that are just canceled. So, like I said, I would rewrite this one more like they'll have to tighten their belts. They will have to tighten their belts, or we will have to tighten our belts would be a more common way of saying that. So people who have to tighten their belts, those would be the poor people. Okay? Number 2, he's raking it in at the moment. If you're raking it in, a physical rake you use to gather up leaves or grass or something like that, to gather something together. If you're raking money in, that means you're bringing in lots of money, you're gathering it together. Here's an ad about making money with real estate, and they use that expression, raking it in with real estate. You can get rich by selling property. Here's another from a book title, Rake in the Cash. So if there's cash on the table, if there's cash in the marketplace, if you're raking it in, you're bringing in lots of money. You're being very profitable. So if you're raking in the money, then you are rich. You're being very successful. They're very hard up. If you're hard up, that means you're having a difficult time. You're struggling, you're suffering. If you are hard up, then you would be a poor person. Number 4, he's finding it hard to make ends meet. Here's a little cartoon that goes with that. Just when you think you can make ends meet, when you think you can make your expenses and your income match up, that you can make your ends meet, somebody moves the ends. They make it more difficult. They make it more challenging for you. So again, if you're finding it hard or difficult to make ends meet, then you are poor. You are struggling financially. You've got more expenses than you have income. The next one here. She's absolutely loaded. If you're loaded, you've got lots of money, lots of cash. If you are loaded, you are very rich. Number 6, they're a lot better off than most. If they're better off, they're in a better situation, better condition, better financial situation. If they're better off than most, then I would say they're rich. For some reason, the book here says poor, so I'm not sure if it's just an error or perhaps they have some different way of using it. The author of this book is, I believe, British, so perhaps there's a different meaning there that I'm not aware of. But I would say if they're better off than most, then they are doing okay. So I would say they're at least somewhat rich. Maybe not rich, but above middle class. Number 7, she's rolling in money. If you are rolling in money, you are rich, just like this cat here. You've got so much money you can just roll around in it and use it like a bed or a blanket. Here's a little comic. It says, money can't make you happy unless you roll around in it. So we say sometimes money can't make you happy, money can't buy happiness. But if you roll around in it, if you make a pile of it on the floor and you roll around and play in it, that would make you happy. Here's another one with a cat. It says, eyes rich. Eyes. I is. I am. The cats always have bad grammar when they do these memes. Eyes rich and rolling in money. So if you are rolling in money, you've got so much money you could throw it on the floor and just roll around. So that would be very rich. He's fallen on hard times. Hard times, again, difficult times, financial struggle, not enough money. That person would be poor. And again, right now, a lot of companies and individuals, companies have closed. They're not doing business. Many small business owners especially are going out of business or really struggling. So we would say right now they are poor. They are struggling. Number 9, they've got money to burn. If you've got money to burn, means you have so much money that you can literally burn it. Here's a picture of a guy using a $100 bill to light his cigar. Because he's got so much money, he could make a campfire with it. Because he has so much that wasting $100 is nothing. There's a story that say somebody like Bill Gates has so much money. He is so rich and he makes money so fast that if he was walking along, if he dropped $100 on the ground, it would be more valuable for him to keep walking. Because if he stopped to pick it up, he would actually lose money because he makes money so fast. Number 10, she seems very down at heel. Down at heel. Somebody who's down at heel, that actually is referring to their shoes. If somebody has new shoes, the heel is tall and strong, but if they can't afford new shoes and their shoes are very worn out, the heel is very low or down. So if somebody is down at heel, they are poor. Some synonyms here for down at the heel I found. And some of these aren't necessarily poor, but more like low quality. Or like seedy, they say here, I would use that more for say a red light district where there's a lot of prostitution or something. We would say that neighborhood is very seedy. The seedy business. Okay, like room salons or something like that. Dilapidated is more run down, falling apart. Same with shabby. Tattered, often we would use for clothing that is torn or ripped or falling apart. Ratty could be some clothing or equipment that's falling apart. Ramshackle would usually refer to some sort of building. Same with decrepit. Dingy could be just like paint or something on a wall that is faded or kind of changing color because of age. Squalid, that would be more like kind of filthy or dirty conditions, unsanitary. And crummy, I would use more for just like low quality, or not pleasant. Okay, but the thesaurus here calls all of those synonyms in a certain way. Okay, it would depend on the situation and exactly what you're talking about. So again, down at heel would be poor, and that's definitely more of a British expression than an American expression. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that in the U.S. Number 11, we're totally broke. Totally broke means your wallet is empty, you have no savings, there's nothing in the bank, you are completely, totally broke. Your pockets are empty, you don't have money at all. So totally broke, obviously, would be poor. And this last one here I really like. It's kind of an interesting expression. They don't have 2 pennies to rub together. They don't have 2 pennies to rub together. What does that mean? Well, what's a penny? This is a picture of the different U.S. coins that are in circulation, all of the different ones, and there are actually 7 different ones that you might see. Now, some of these are more common than others. Some are not used as much. So let me show you another table here that talks about what we call them and what they represent. So the first one here is a penny, okay? And it's sort of a copper color, and they have pictures here of the front and the back, and that is worth 1 cent. The little C there with the line through it is pronounced cent. Remember, cent is related to the word century, and a century is 100 years. So it takes 100 cents to equal $1, or $1 equals 100 cents. So 1 cent equals 1/100th of $1. Okay? So that 1 cent coin, and that's what it says on it. It doesn't say $0.01. It just says 1 cent. That's the value. We call it a penny. We don't call it a 1 cent coin. It's a penny. That's the name of the coin. We also have a nickel. A nickel is worth 5 cents. And you can see it's bigger than a penny, and it's a little thicker, and it's the silver color here. Okay. The next one is a dime. A dime is actually our smallest coin in size. Physical size, it's the smallest, but it does not have the smallest value. A dime is worth 10 cents. And you'll hear the expression sometimes about, people will talk about 1 thin dime. Like if they're broke, they'll say, I don't have 1 thin dime, because the shape of a dime is very thin. It's smaller than both the penny and the nickel, which are worth less. It's actually our smallest coin, and it's not only small diameter, but very thin. And that is worth 10 cents. So a dime is worth 10 cents. It's worth 2 nickels or 10 pennies. So the picture here is not completely accurate. The nickel is bigger than the penny, and both of those are bigger than the dime. Okay, so let me go back to the previous picture. You can see here the comparison better. This is more accurate. The nickel is bigger than the penny, and those are both bigger than the dime. Okay, the next one here is a quarter. A quarter means 1/4 or 1/4 dollar. So if $1 is 100 cents, a quarter is 25 cents. And we could also write that with the dollar sign, 0.25. 25 hundredths of a dollar, but we would still read this as 25 cents, or you could say a quarter. Okay, you can say a quarter dollar, but you don't really need to say a dollar. It's 1 quarter, 1 quarter. A quarter is 25 cents. The next one is a half dollar. A half dollar is worth 50 cents. Okay, these are larger coins. They're not very commonly used now. There are a few around. Most people who have half dollars collect them. They just keep them or save them or maybe give them as gifts or something even. Most people don't spend them. If they have them, they keep them. You can see this one and a lot of these are pure silver, so they're actually very valuable. And then we have some $1 coins, okay? And that is 100 cents, but we would never say it's worth 100 cents. We would just say it's $1. So you could say a penny is a 1 cent coin, a nickel is worth 5 cents, a dime is 10 cents, a quarter is 25 cents, a half dollar is 50 cents, a $1 coin is $1. We would not say it's worth 100 cents. Now, this picture of a dollar shows a president. This is George Washington. There are a couple of other dollar coins that you might see as well. This one is called the Susan B. Anthony dollar. Susan B. Anthony was involved in helping women fight for the right to vote, for women's rights. So this is called the Susan B. Anthony dollar, or people will just call it a Susie B. A Susie B. Now, this coin is worth $1, but people don't like to use it. And people don't use it very often because it is almost exactly the same size as a quarter. If I go back to the other image there, you can see here the quarter here and the Susan B. Anthony, they're the same color. They are the same size. So what happened was when people had these Susie B's, they would spend it, or they would give it to somebody thinking it was a quarter when they were actually giving them $1. So they lost money. So people didn't like them because they got confused, or they lost money accidentally. There's another one, and this one is, again, about the same size, but it's more of a gold color. So people don't confuse it as much. And this is the Sacagawea dollar. Have you heard of Sacagawea? You probably have, even though you may not realize it. Sacagawea was an Indian lady, a young Indian woman, who led some explorers to map the western United States. These explorers were named Lewis and Clark, the two men, and she guided them. She was their guide on their exploration of the Indian West, or the western United States. And she actually had a baby that she carried with her during this journey, during this exploration. So she has been honored and recognized for her contribution to that exploration, to that journey. This is a statue of her. She's also appeared on a postage stamp with her image, and you can see the thing behind her here. That's like a board, a cradle that the baby would be carried in on her back, strapped to her back. And you've probably seen her you would have seen her if you've ever watched the movie Night at the Museum with Ben Stiller. If you have seen that, then you have seen Sacagawea. She was one of the main characters, one of the museum display, one of the wax figures from the museum that came to life. Wax figure. Remember in this movie Night at the Museum, it was a a magical place at night. All of the displays, the animals and people came to life. So if you saw that, you saw Sacagawea. This is a picture of her from the movie, what her character looked like, and this is Lewis and Clark here discussing things. But she was behind like the glass display case. Another character that you'll see here is across from Sacagawea is this guy. That is Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt was a president of the United States in the early 1900s, so just over 100 years ago. And he was also referred to often as Teddy Roosevelt. Okay, Teddy instead of Theodore. He was played in the movie by Robin Williams. And this is what he looked like. And you can see here from the picture, he looks pretty similar to the real man. It was a very good match for the character. And you'll see a lot of pictures of Teddy Roosevelt riding on horseback, like as a soldier here, like Robin Williams is in the movie. And this is what he looks like as he's a living figure in the movie. And he fell in love with Sacagawea. So they had a romance going on at night. Of course, here's a picture of them up on his horse together. But he fell in love with her and dreamed of her when he was not awake. So, if you've ever seen this movie, you have seen both of those characters. Now, the idiom here is that you don't have two pennies to rub together, okay? Well, if you look at the penny, you'll see a man's face on here. Who is that? That, of course, is this man, Abraham Lincoln. So on the front of the coin, which we call the obverse, is Abraham Lincoln, a side view of him. And on the back, this is, do you know what that is? This is one of the monuments or memorials in Washington, D.C. This is the Lincoln Memorial. And if you look right here in the center, you can see between the columns a figure, a statue. So if we look at that, this is a picture of it. You can see a statue here in the center. And if you zoom in, this is a large figure of Abraham Lincoln seated in a chair. Going back to night at the museum, you would have seen Abraham Lincoln as well in this scene.
Great Gatsby.
You two make an adorable couple.
Oh, no, we're not. I mean, we're not.
We're not, blah, blah, blah. I never lie.
So notice Abraham Lincoln says, "I never lie," because he was known for being very honest. Actually, his nickname was Honest Abe. Abe is short for Abraham. But in that movie, Battle of the Smithsonian, not only in the other museum, but in like Abraham Lincoln at the Lincoln Memorial also came to life. And so you would have seen him there. So, back to our question here. They don't have two pennies to rub together. That means two 1-cent coins. If you don't even have two pennies that you can rub together between your fingers, you would be extremely poor. Okay, very, very poor. Okay, all right, guys, that is everything for today. We will continue this unit next time around, and so make sure you do the rest of the exercises, and we will look at those next week. Thank you.